The next thing I'm going to demonstrate is making a candy cane. And again, it's a really good exercise, even if you have, again, no interest in holiday or decorative type of things. The skills that you pick up learning how to do artistic glass blowing transfer directly over to scientific glass blowing. So I've already puntied up about an inch or so of white glass. What is this? This is White Stag from Troutman art. Many really cool colors you can find from Troutman, North Star, Alchemy Glass. Again, I'm not an expert in these things, but they have everything under the rainbow. I'm going to streak the red across, and in this case I'm only going to make one streak of red. Then I'm going to twist it, and then I'm going to stretch it out a little bit and then shape it into a candy cane form. So this is very similar to the techniques that you use for the glass icicle, but it is another way to get a really good feel for how the glass is going to flow. And really what I found is if you want to be proficient at scientific glass blowing, you need to essentially take the novelty away of working with the torch. In other words, when you first work with the torch, you're like, oh wow, I'm working with a torch. Oh, wow, it's such a... but after you've made 100 icicles or more, you're just like, that's no big deal. I'm just making another icicle. And you try and get better, obviously. So there's kind of, I think, a little bit of an adrenaline rush that you get the very first few times you're working with the torch because it's an open flame, and you're feeling very awkward because your hand positions are very different than what you might think you're supposed to do. But then when it becomes more routine, you do what you need to do, and you don't even think about it. In other words, your hands are making the movement. Like right now my left hand is rotating and moving back in the flame to pre-warm the glass, and I'm not really giving it too much thought of the position and everything else that goes with it. So now I've got my glass stringer, the red, touch it on, move it across. So I'm rotating it to hopefully make it a little easier for you to see, and then burn it off in the flame. Glass stringer, the red, touch it on, move it across. So I'm rotating it to hopefully make it a little easier for you to see, and then burn it off in the flame. Heat that little nub, and so now I've got a red streak of glass on the white. Put that away. Now in this case, I'm not going to put a second streak of red glass on because that wouldn't give the candy cane effect that I'm going for. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use just some colorless glass as a punty to help me twist it, because otherwise I don't have a grip. In this case, I'm making this as a cold seal. It can be a hot seal, you can just burn it off later. This is a very, again, short piece of glass, and I've got a pretty decent intensity for the flame, so this will go pretty quickly. So it's nice and floppy. So I pause, rotate, rotate, rotate. Again, so I pause, rotate, rotate, rotate. Again, normally I rotate like in this position, but again, for the camera, I want you to see as best as I can show what's going on. And I don't know if I did this intentionally or just one of these weird quirks. I rotate in the flame towards myself, and then I come out and then twist like this. So again, you can see my hand movement. In other words, you can rotate or twist in either direction. In other words, I could be rotating away from me like this. So I'm rotating away and twist, but it's entirely up to you whether you're rotating clockwise or counterclockwise in the flame. Same with how you twist it. I suspect right-handed and left-handed people will, probably do it in the opposite direction, but I could be wrong. So now what I'm doing is I'm going back. So let me just pause. I'm not going to do anything here. I'm just going to let it cool down for a second so it doesn't move too much. So I've established my helix, my twist in here. And now what I'm going to do, it's not really not a helix, but it's a twist. So now what I want to do, heat up that bottom section, and I'm actually pulling and gently twisting. I don't want to twist too much. Now typically it will get a little bit thick at the base, and I'm actually pulling and gently twisting. I don't want to twist too much. Now typically it will get a little bit thick at the base. You can clean that up afterwards, but I'm gonna clean it up a little bit right now. And what I'm going for is uniformity. I want my candy cane ornament to have the same uniformity throughout, same diameter. Now with this one, it's going to be a little thin, maybe like 4 millimeters in diameter or thereabouts, but that's okay. For what I'm doing, that's what I'm happy with. If you wanted it thicker, you would simply use a larger piece of glass when you start, and you wouldn't taper it like I'm doing now. You wouldn't pull it down. Again, purely aesthetic, but you can see there's a little bit of a bulge right there. It's just a tiny bit thicker. So I'm going to heat that and go from there. And by the way, if you notice, again, rotating with both hands. If it comes off axis, just heat it up and then rotate. Don't twist, don't pull or push. Just rotate, and that'll bring it back in. So now again, I'm tapering the very top. And because it might have heated up too much, this colorless glass should be a cold seal. Oh, look at that. Came right off. So I just tapped it on this little blast shield thing. Now the tip of this probably really won't make much of a difference, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to heat it up and remove just a small section with the tweezers, and that helps bring it down to a little bit of a point as well, just in case there was a crack or any kind of junk on there. So now if you notice, I'm just rotating back and forth just to clean that up a little bit. By the way, for color glass, I can tell the temperature based on the color. This North Star red turns black when it's hot. And then as it cools, it's still very hot, as it cools, it goes back to red. So I can just go back to the base and give it a little bit of splash of heat. So I'm going to do this with my left, so that way it's a little bit easier to see with the camera. So I'm going back and forth, and I've seen several ways to do this. What I like to do is hold it steady, rotate it a little bit once it becomes a little soft, and then what I like to do is feed it into the flame as it starts to collapse on itself. Okay? Notice I'm working away from the flame. Okay? Feed it into the flame as it starts to collapse on itself. Okay? Notice I'm working away from the flame. Okay? And then with my tweezers, I can adjust the pitch of it a little bit. I don't like how it's curled over a little bit too much. I let that go, so I can come back in here, and again with my tweezers, adjust that a little bit. And here's what I'm thinking for this icicle. The reason I do it this way is that it gives me lots of flexibility of where I can cut it off. And if I want to, like these little scraps of glass, you can pull them down and make a very, very tiny icicle if you want. So at this point, you can make any adjustments you want. What I'm not going to show, just because I thought about it this last 2 seconds, of putting a hook on here. So I'm just going to make this into a icicle or a candy cane that is free, no hooks or anything like that. So I just burnt it off there, holding it with the tweezers. Kind of got it at an awkward angle. And what I'm going to do is again fire or just heat that very bottom part to let it round up a little bit. Give that a second, and then it cools, and there you go. This glass is thin enough that my kind of manhandling it there, whoop, probably won't like going on the floor, won't cause it to crack. So there you go. And I'll show again some photos of this. If I had prepared for this, but I really didn't think about it, at this point what I could do is fuse a hook right on here to make it easier to hold. Maybe I'll do that as a bonus video. So I'm gonna make a little hook for the candy cane that I just made. It's cooled down. It only took a couple minutes to cool down because it's very thin glass. I'm going to use, I have a little bit of scrap of the red and white glass, so I might as well use that to make the hook. Now what's funny is I first started making a hook for icicles separately and attaching it, not because I thought it would be an artistic flair. It's because I was having such incredible difficulty making the shepherd's hook. I was failing so badly at it. What I realized was, you know what, forget it. I'll just make a hook separately and shove it on there. Now, obviously, with practice, it's not an issue for me anymore. But in this case, making that type of shepherd's hook's just not going to be reasonable with the way the candy cane is. So first thing, what I'm going to do is I need to pull the glass down into a stringer. So I touch these two together. That should be a cold seal, but if not, we'll burn it off. So I'm just going to warm up this section of white and red glass. And again, I don't want to twist it at this point. I just want it nice and hot. Okay, and then I give it a little bit of a pull, a little bit of a twist. And I'm going to heat the base up a little bit more just to get a little bit more glass. Like that. Oop. I came out at a weird angle for the camera, so I pulled a little bit at the base more than I wanted to, but in this case, it's not going to make any difference. Got a moment, pull, and twist, there we go. And I just want basically a little bit of glass to work with. So, there we go, move that. I will actually be using this 3mm punty a little bit later on, and can pull a little bit of the end off just because it's got some, again, imperfections in it. Now, and this is again a really good practice, I'm going to do the same technique that I would do for making the curve of the candy cane. I basically want this glass to just kind of fold over onto itself. We'll see what I mean in a second. But in this case, instead of stopping with the candy cane, I'm actually going to just kind of fold over onto itself. We'll see what I mean in a second. But in this case, instead of stopping with the candy cane, I'm actually going to let it come all the way down and touch. Okay, so it's touched right now. Now the thing is, it's touching, but it's not sealed. So I'm going to give it just a little bit of heat. With such thin glass, it won't be much. There we go. Now it's still not a proper seal, but that's okay, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to punty with a cold seal onto the top of the hook. Okay, right there. Okay. Ah, sorry, broke that off. Now I'm going to flame cut it right about here, and you can see that actually the two pieces of glass, or the it's not properly sealed yet. So as I flame cut it, I'm actually going to push it forward so it touches and completes the loop. So you can see what I'm doing right there. I'm actually staggering it, or pushing it back and forth rather than giving it a hard pull at the very beginning. And now the loop is committed. I'm actually going to push it forward so it touches and completes the loop. So you can see what I'm doing right there. I'm actually staggering it, or pushing it back and forth rather than giving it a hard pull at the very beginning. And now the loop is complete. What I like to do, heat this up just a little bit, and I'll show it on this side, and then tap it into the marver. I would use my other marver, but it's got the icicle sitting on it and I want to knock it over. And that gives me a pretty good seal. It's not perfect. I can see like it's not exactly, there we go, sealed. So I add a little bit more heat and that's fine. And I'll have time to correct that. But the important thing is I have a perfectly good little loop and it's cold sealed onto this punty. So I could take this and put it aside literally for days or weeks or months, potentially years, and whenever I need to use it, pick it up and then stick it on here. And I've actually done that before, where I've made several loops like this and then just left them in a rack sitting up like this for months at a time before I eventually use them for a demo or something like that. The reason I mention this is a very good method to practice some of the handling of the glass, of pulling a stringer, controlling the heat, bending it over so it forms a loop, wrapping it over, fusing it, and obviously having your cold seal and so forth. And it's pretty low risk. In other words, if this loop turns out bad, it's just a tiny piece of glass, I throw it away, start over. So it's a very good exercise to practice. And if you get it down, you'll basically have a bunch of loops that you can use for necklaces, ornaments, whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fuse these two together like this. This is cold, obviously, because I can hold it in my hand. So first I'm going to just warm up the base, or the top of the crown or crest, or whatever you want to call it, of the candy cane. And then I'm going to heat up my loop itself, because it's very thin glass, so I want to work far out in the flame. And once I can see that they're both glowing, I touch them together in the flame, push them together, and this is where you have to be careful. You can see that because I've heated that section up, my pitch of my candy cane changes a little bit. That's why I typically do it in one big step. What I'm going to actually do to make this a little bit better is I'm going to sharpen my flame so it's much more like a laser, much smaller. Come in here, heat it a little bit on one side, heat a little bit on the other, and if I need to, I can adjust the pitch and so forth going in. Hit it from this side. Again, what you do not want to do at this point is twist, because if I get this loop really hot, it'll be soft and I can twist it, which is going to be really bad. If you want to change its shape, there you go. Remember I meant to do that, not really, but remove the punty, as I was about to say. You can fire polish the end to clean that up, and then if you want, you can heat up the loop, and then with a graphite you can come in and make some adjustments, right? If I cared about this, I would kind of go in here and heat that section up a little bit more, just to make sure this is properly fused. But at the end of the day, again, for this particular demo, I'm not too concerned. This is now not quite flat. In other words, it's got a off the plane. So what I can do, heat this up and then use my graphite pad just to make sure it's flat. Got to be real careful because the top of this candy cane is incredibly hot. I didn't do it. What I was thinking about was punting up to the bottom of the candy cane. So what I was thinking about doing was putting a glass punty here, and that would give me a really long handle. But in the end, I decided I didn't care that much, so I didn't do that. But anyway, so now I have my candy cane, and it's got a little hook, so you could hang it from the tree or a Christmas stocking or whatever, and go from there. And by using some of the waste glass that was on the bottom, remember where that came from, this was the bottom of the candy cane itself, I actually end up making a matching hook. So, you know, bonus points for that, I guess. I don't know. But again, it's an incredibly useful way to practice the fundamentals of glass blowing, because at the end of the day, if you do a bad job, just throw it in the waste pan. It's no big deal. If you do a halfway decent job, well, now you've done your Christmas shopping, right? You know, and there you go.